This week's episode was brought to you by JP, Ben, AW, Edward Coat, and Cygnus. Thank you, JP, Ben, AW, Edward Coat, and Cygnus. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that we here at The Whole Rabbit get to keep serving up devil snake sushi at the Transcendental Buffet at the end of time for all the heroes of the multiverse. If you'd like to help us fillet hydras or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit. where your monthly donation of just $5 won't just get you access to the entire library of extended episodes, more than doubling the Whole Rabbit content available. I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our cover art at no additional cost to you, and the secret keys to our Discord server, which admittedly might come at the additional cost of your sanity. This week's wet, wriggly episode focuses on the titanic sea serpent lurking just below the depths of your darkest dreams, slithering through the creation mythos of more cultures than we can ever hope to discuss in one evening. In the first half of the show, we go into depth on the Biblical Leviathan and its mythological roots in the Canaanite Lotan. Along the way, we eat fish with Jesus, cheer on the mighty Typhon, and get to know Grandma Tiamat. In the extended show, we discuss Leviathan in the tarot, the ancient Egyptian origin of the backrooms, Ragnarok, Thor picking up a really long cat, the Typhonian OTO of Kenneth Grant, and what it all has to do with Cthulhu. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
So it's like if you're sailing across the ocean to get to the Americas, it's like last time that a ship went that way, the Midgard serpent got it or whatever.
Or the Kraken.
Or the Kraken got it! Ate all my duck liver!
And Jimmy, too.
I think about that sometimes. Like, they didn't just think there were monsters. They knew there were monsters.
There was nobody on Twitter to fact check them. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just tell you about all the primordial waters in the abyss, why Thales was right, and what it has to do with the Higgs boson. Nay, we squeeze like sardines into a modified submersible we stole from James Cameron's estate and dive all the way down to catch a tantalizing glimpse of the primordial nuclear idiot dragon god gnawing hungrily in its tumultuous, reality-producing slumber, held in perpetuity by the monotonous thin piping of flutes, because this week, we're discussing the Abyssal Dragon of Chaos. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the Melusinian matron, Mari-sama.
Greetings and salutations.
The body of blaspheming bunnies, Malachor 5.
Not to be confused with Malachor 3.
And the glorious glistening one, Heka Astra.
Hello.
Oh, it's a good one.
So this really is a sequel to an episode back from September of last year titled The Primordial Waters of the Abyss. Specifically, today, we're discussing the snick that's said to be swimming around in the primordial waters.
A lot of people are afraid of the open sea. That's called thalassophobia. I think it makes a lot of sense because the water and the things from the water for us humans are have so much advantage over us when we're in that element. So I think a lot of fear surrounds this concept.
I definitely feel this kind of like fearful reverence for water that's so deep I can't see the bottom. But it's also like a kind of awe, like I respect it.
As a kid, I couldn't swim in an unlit pool at night, even if it only went down 10 feet. I think I'd still get irrational jolts of anxiety. It's like not being able to see the bottom. It could just be an infinite space filled with anything of unimaginable size just below it, and you would never know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally terrified of open water like that because there is no grounding mechanism. Like you can't even see the ground. And usually when I'm swimming in a body of water like that, I have these like flash fantasies of, like something coming up and biting my foot off or something, or dragging me under. It's like terrifying to think about.
When I was younger, I was a sea cadet. You guys can go ahead and laugh at me if you want. I'm not a very strong swimmer, but I wanted to learn how to sail anyways. And they made you do, you had to capsize your boat and you had to turtle your boat out in the ocean and learn how to right the boat again. And that was really, really scary. You'd have the boat capsized and usually the person who was bigger would be the one that had to right the boat, and the person who was smaller had to make sure that the boat stayed bow to wind. And I was always the smallest one, so I was in the water for the longest. just like trying to keep the boat facing bow towards the direction of the wind. And it really freaked me out, but it definitely also gave me this kind of respect, like knowing that I was just this tiny human in the ocean.
I think it's safe to say it's a universal fear. And to sum up the primordial waters of the Abyss episode in 10 or 15 seconds, consciousness as we know it arises from an undifferentiated state into having an ego, which by its definition is discrete and cut off from the vast ocean of consciousness. The idea of the sea serpent or the dragon represents the potential for consciousness and life that stirs within that abyssal darkness of the unconscious or the undifferentiated consciousness.
And that's something that many, many different cultures throughout history have identified in some way or another and given myths to.
And so even when we're listening to a true crime podcast and we're listening to the gory details of how could somebody do this to another person, and we learn about all their psychological angles and whatnot, well, it's something that Jung talked about, where our unconscious motives, drives, and desires have the potential to just swim up and swallow our ego whole. And we become uncontrollable, a beast, destroyed in an instant. And so we're going to talk about the mythological mirror of that beast, its equivalent in mythology and religion.
What about its equivalent in music?
Oh, yes. That would be the Funky Worm by the Ohio Players and its legion of spooky gangster rappers which followed in its wake, born from it.
So you're saying the Funky Worm is the Leviathan of music?
Yes.
Awesome.
If you don't know what the Funky Worm is,
I think you can get away with playing a sample.
when considering monsters of the deep, perhaps none is better known than the biblical Leviathan, who, besides his most famous appearance in the book of Job, is also mentioned in the book of Psalms, Isaiah, Amos, and, depending on the translation, Jonah. If you happen to be an Ethiopian Gnostic, Leviathan is further documented in the book of Enoch. I thought to get us started, we'd look at Job 41, which dedicates its entirety to describing the power and appearance of the great Leviathan.
Is it Bible time?
It's Bible time.
Yay. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? Who hath given me anything beforehand that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. Would I keep silence concerning his boastings, or his proud talk, or his fair array of words? Who can uncover the face of his garment? Who shall come within his double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? Round about his teeth is terror. His scales are his pride, shut up together with a close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together, that they cannot be sundered. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning torches, and sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of a seething pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. In his neck abideth strength, and dismay danceth before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together, they are firm upon him. They cannot be moved. His heart is as firm as a stone, yea, firm as the nether millstone. When he raiseth himself up, the mighty are afraid. By reason of despair they are beside themselves. If one lay at him with the sword, it will not hold, nor the spear, the dart, nor the pointed shaft. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Clubs are accounted as stubble. He laugheth at the rattling of the javelin. Sharpest potsherds are under him. He spreadeth a threshing sledge upon the mire. He maketh the deep to boil like a pot. He maketh the sea like a seething mixture. He maketh a path to shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. Upon the earth there is not his like, who is made to be fearless. He looketh at all the high things. He is king over all the proud beasts.
Badass.
I don't know, it's like, this needs to be a metal song.
Oh, there is.
Dismay danceth before him. I think that's my favorite one.
I like, he laugheth at the rattling of the javelin.
It's also good, right?
Yeah.
This is pretty good. Right at the very beginning, it says, whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. So like, God's like, yeah, this crazy beast, that's mine.
I made that.
I did that.
God is praised for creating all things, including Leviathan in Psalms 104, saying, "There go the ships, there is Leviathan, whom thou hast formed to sport therein. In fact, the entirety of Psalms 104 is closely related to the Egyptian hymn of Aten. Following this line of thought, Leviathan is not seen as a contender of God, but a beautiful feature of nature. A number of sources seem to think it's a crocodile, which is being referred to here in Psalms 104. Then, echoing the events of earlier, well-known myths at the time, Jehovah vanquishes Leviathan in Isaiah 27.
In that day, the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan the slant serpent, and Leviathan the tortuous serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. In that day sing ye of her, a vineyard of foaming wine.
In the Old Testament, Leviathan's defeat is assured. Unlike myths of old, Leviathan is no longer a deity, or even necessarily a demon, but has been demoted to the position of archbeast, serving in some cases as a metaphor for the enemies of Israel. Shlomo Yitzhaki, a French medieval rabbi, in his commentaries on Genesis, proclaimed that Leviathan's salted jerky flesh would be served to the righteous at the advent of the Jewish Messiah. According to him, God had slew the female Leviathan long ago to prevent untenable destruction should they hump and proliferate. The meat has since been salted and is awaiting consumption by the righteous at the end of time. In the Oktamut, Hebrew religious poetry from the 11th century, Leviathan has fins and is thus considered kosher, unlike the inedible snake or crocodile suggested in Psalms 104. The Oktamut also confirms that someday Leviathan is to be consumed by the righteous during a sumptuous feast in heaven, gefilte of the gods. That is an important distinction. If Leviathan has fins and scales, that's a good fish to eat. But if it's a big sea serpent, it's no go.
It's not kosher then.
So we know this beast has fins, at least in this version. One variation on this myth from the Jewish Midrash comes from commentaries of Rabbi Judah Bar Simon, who declared that the hunting of Leviathan and its land-dwelling monster pair Behemoth would be reserved at the end of time for those who had abstained from participating in pagan sports. Another version states that Gabriel will be sent to slay the giant fish for the banquet, but will be unable to without the help of God.
What do they define pagan sports as?
Football.
Well, sports, the word kind of just means activity, doing
It
things.
could be like a hunting party too. Like if you don't indulge in that stuff, if you don't go to the sports ball game, then you get to go fishing with Dad God at the end of time.
You get to eat behemoth if you don't participate in basically pagan rituals. Is the Super Bowl a pagan ritual? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So if you watch the Super Bowl, you don't get to eat behemoth. Sorry. Sports is a cult.
From what I understand, in ancient Rome, when you competed in like Olympic sports, like throwing discs and stuff, and throwing javelins, it was done in the nude.
Oh, and grease wrestling, you can't forget that.
And it was for the gods, too.
And it was perfectly fine for Jews to participate, but they were circumcised, and the Roman audiences thought that was a little pornographic, so they would make them cover it with something. So this is kind of like, well, don't go do that. Don't go play their stupid sports, because then you won't get to hunt the giant behemoth at the end of time. I mean, that's got to be fun, you know?
They called my dick weird. Don't play sports with those guys. They're lame.
You're in the locker room.
So it seems like in Isaiah, it says that Leviathan is a female. And interestingly, according to the apocryphal book of Enoch, the monster Leviathan is a girl. And the boy monster is actually Behemoth. In chapter 60, The Quaking of the Heaven, Behemoth and Leviathan, the elements, it states the following. Afterwards, the judgment shall take place according to his mercy and his patience. And on that day were two monsters parted, a female monster named Leviathan, to dwell in the abysses of the ocean over the fountains of the waters. But the male is named Behemoth, who occupied with his breast a waste wilderness named Duidain, on the east of the garden where the elect and righteous dwell. So this chapter goes on a bit regarding the elements, and then it ends saying, And the angel of peace who was with me said to me, These two monsters, prepared conformably to the greatness of God, shall feed.
So this is like where the concept of Pokemon comes from.
It's Gyarados.
It's like, well, yeah, it's like the two legendaries. You have to pick which game or which color you want.
Yeah. It seems like you eat both of them, according to the Book of Enoch. You don't just eat Leviathan, you eat Behemoth as well.
It's surf and turf. You get to go fishing with the boys, and then you get to go hunting with the boys. All the best things in life.
So Leviathan shows up in another apocryphal work as well called the Book of Giants. And this book features the giants, otherwise known as Nephilim, or the giant bastard children that are half angel, half human. And God wants to make the great flood happen. He plans to kill all the Nephilim as well. And he sends presents visions and dreams to 4 of the giants, one of whom is named Oya. Eventually, the flood happens, and everything living on Earth that wasn't on the ark or in the sea just dies. At least that's what was supposed to happen, but some of the giants survived by basically just floating on the sea, propped up on dead bodies. And God sees this, and he gets right pissed, so he orders Leviathan to come along and kill off the remaining Nephilim, which Leviathan succeeds in doing, except for one, the aforementioned giant named Oya. So
Oya!
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So Oya actually has a battle with Leviathan, and he slays the great sea monster. And God gets wicked pissed again, and he sends the angel Raphael over to finish the job. And then Oya is slain by the angel, and God, just for good measure, decides that some of the spirits of the Nephilim should just be stuck wandering the earth, and the rest are damned to hell. I think Oya goes to hell. Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
Is this where the Kool-Aid guy gets his catchphrase from?
I love how Leviathan is obedient enough to God to go attack this Oya, but Oya's been playing too many Souls games and just dices him. God's like, what?
Like, that was my starter Pokemon, you asshole.
It's like in Return of the Jedi when he's crying over the, what's it called?
Leviathan has fainted. God sent out Raphael.
Side note, olla is also a Mexican term for like a large pot that you make pozole or tamales in.
Ooh.
They mentioned pots twice in the description because it boils.
If Leviathan was a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne boss, what do you think it would say when you slay it? Would it be a nightmare or what? Does Leviathan count as an old one?
Well, I think that'd be like Kos.
I guess it would be similar to Kos.
Mm-hmm.
Another related tale from the Midrash concerns Leviathan, Jonah, and the whale. While God was creating the world and everything in it, he decided upon creating a fish intended to harbor the prophet Jonah. The eyes of the fish would serve as windows, and light was provided by a diamond in the ceiling, which shone not just on the inside, but the outside of the whale as well, making it visible all the way down to the bottom. We all live in a yellow submarine.
That sounds like a disco whale.
He loved it. He didn't want to leave. In fact, all the famous depictions of him that I could find are him being forcefully ejected with a fish Uber that happens later. He's not in the Yellow Submarine anymore. It's kind of sad. So the way things have been designed in the ocean, once a creature has reached an allotted age, it would serve itself up to the great sea dragon Leviathan to be devoured. One day, Jonah awoke to discover his magic whale submarine had scheduled itself to insert itself into the great gaping maw of Leviathan, and it was already on its way.
It's so hot.
When they arrived, Jonah, drawing from his rabbinical knowledge, told the giant sea dragon, "For thy sake I came hither. I was meet that I should know thine abode, for it is my appointed task to capture thee in the life to come and slaughter thee for the table of the just and pious," which immediately sent Leviathan fleeing in terror. This left Jonah and his whale to embark on a psychedelic mystery tour of the river from which the ocean flows, the place where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, Gehenna, Sheol, Funky City, In-N-Out Burger, and other wonderful places.
Oh, yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, he doesn't want to leave, so they send this little cramped fish to suck him up and bring him back to land to do prophet stuff.
If Big Goth Mommy swallows me, just don't free me, please. I want to stay there.
Leviathan is the original giant swallowing goth mommy, but we'll get there. So as silly as the heavenly fish banquet might seem at first, it may explain some of the deeper meaning behind its use in Christianity, as it creates a hard correlation between what in older mythologies was the dragon of chaos and what is later coded symbolically as the Jesus fish. This means that when Jesus Christ miraculously fed his congregation using only 2 fish, it was symbolic of the feast promised to the righteous once the Messiah had finally arrived. This may be further emphasized by the number of fish. As we recall, one was slain and salted by the Heavenly Father in the beginning to protect creation, and the other is slain at the end of time when the world is to be redeemed. The feeding of the multitude, as it has come to be known, was not just about feeding hungry people, but confirming that Jesus Christ was in fact the long-awaited Messiah. This also explains why Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John feature the feeding of the multitude as the only miracle found in all 4 books.
Aside from the crucifixion, of course.
Aside from the crucifixion, yeah. So it's kind of a big deal. But as we're about to discuss, the Hebrew Leviathan and his defeat at the hands of Yahweh, or in this case his only son Jesus Christ, owes to much older mythologies. For instance, scholars are not entirely certain what the word Leviathan even means, but think it might be a foreign loanword and easily reminiscent of the Ugaritic sea serpent deity Lotan, whose name means coiled.
It's totally a Gyarados.
Well, Gyarados is based off of a Chinese myth, but in the pantheon of Pokemon, yes, this is Gyarados.
Is it based on a Chinese Leviathan-esque myth?
It's about a carp that swims up the waterfall to the dragon temple, and then when it reaches the top, it jumps over the river, and then it turns into a dragon.
Oh shit, that's why it knows waterfall.
They have that myth in Japanese lore as well.
Yeah, I think it happens at a temple in the myth is from China, though they're talking about a temple over there.
Sharesies.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's actually the problem with this topic is like every culture on the planet has this myth.
Sharing is caring.
in the Shinto religion, it's Yamata no Orochi versus Susanoo, which is the storm god. This Orochi is like a multi-headed hydra and primordial chaos incarnate. Like we said, there's parallels all over the globe.
It's interesting it's a storm god that fights the serpent. So, as we'll see, prior to Yahwism and the biblical Hebrews, the Semitic people combined the name of their gods with the domain which defined them. For instance, while Yama means sea in Hebrew, it also to an ancient Canaanite would refer to the god of the sea. Thus, Lotan was a servant of the sea god Yama and served as arch nemesis of the Canaanite storm and fertility god Baal Hadad. While some of these motifs saw integration within the Hebrew Bible, Lotan came over completely intact. Even the revelations of St. John included imagery long associated with Lotan, who is described as the mighty one with 7 heads. Like as we know, Mystery Babylon rides astride the 7-headed beast in the end of days.
In Thelema, we call it Therion.
As Henry Zebrowski would say, so as it says in the Ugaritic text,
If you smite Lotan, the crooked serpent, the mighty one with 7 heads, Baal will run you through with his spear, even as he struck Lotan, the crooked serpent with 7 heads.
The pairing of a storm deity overcoming the serpent of the abyss kind of echoes the Egyptian myth of Set slaying Apep during Ra's nightly journey on his boat or his solar bark through the underworld. And I think it's really interesting, too, that Set is considered a storm god as well. And that's a motif that just repeats over and over again.
in so much as we discuss Christ symbolically slaying Leviathan, the Christian Apep Lotan equivalent, he also rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, which is symbolically sacred to both Set and Typhon. Typhon is, of course, the Greek version of Leviathan. This is another example of the symbolic importance the Dragon of Chaos has to the esoteric fiber of Christianity.
It's a lot like how the soccer mom Christianity might sound. Christ is also against the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Christ is going to fight against the Antichrist. He has an adversary, and it's usually like, oh yeah, that's the snake in the garden. That's the same evil we're fighting over here in America today.
But as we mentioned in our Primordial Abyss episode, the Hebrew word Nahash for serpent and the Hebrew word Messiah both have a gematria value of 358, which gives them a spooky occult connection.
There are worthy opponents to each other.
If the serpent never got into the garden, then we wouldn't need Christ to redeem humanity. Don't you think God had a plan? Remember how Christ rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, and the donkey is sacred to Set and Typhon? Well, we talked about Set before, but who's Typhon?
So Typhon is from the Greek myths, and he's an adversary to Zeus. And there's many different variations of this story of Typhon versus Zeus, but Apollodorus, he presents a version that's got a lot of flavor, and I kind of like it because there's more detail involved. I'm going to paraphrase Book 1, Chapter 6, which is specifically about Typhon versus Zeus. Now, the myth of the great battle of Titans versus God in ancient Greece is known as the Titanomachy. It lasted 10 years and saw the gods defeat most of the Titans at the beginning of time. It made Zeus the new supreme god, and with his new power, he imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus. Then the roles of the universe were doled out by Zeus of all the different elements, making himself the god of the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld, etc. A government of gods of sorts. But they had one last problem, which was Gaia, a Titan that they essentially couldn't kill.
This is like Avatar.
Now Gaia was angry that her offspring, the Titans, were trapped in the Tartarus. So she plotted revenge, and in her rage she generated a monstrous being named Typhon, whose sole purpose was to defeat Zeus.
Greek historian Apollodorus describes Typhon thusly.
In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of earth. As far as the thighs, he was of human shape, and of such prodigious bulk that he out-topped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars. One of his hands reached out to the west and the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads. From the thighs downward he had huge coils of vipers, which, when drawn out, reached to his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkept hair streaming on the wind from his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes.
Fucking metal. Anyway, so Typhon's created by Gaia, and he goes straight towards Olympus. And along the way, he battles 4 gods, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, and Poseidon, each of them mighty in their own respective roles. He defeats them all one by one, and this causes the remaining gods on Olympus to panic as Typhon was drawing nearer and nearer. So these remaining gods assume their animal forms so as not to be recognized by Typhon as they try to escape. And as the myth goes, it is said that they fled south to Egypt, and it's there that they were recognized as gods in these forms. This left only Zeus and Athena to fight against Typhon. Athena held her own in battle, since she is somewhat of a god of war, specifically tactics, and her mighty shield blocked many of his attacks, and she was, after all, the favorite daughter of Zeus for all of her respective accomplishment in her time. And she attempted to stab the heart of the mighty Typhon, but he grabs her midair and he slams her into a pillar. This, of course, gets Zeus pissed, who then casts a mighty lightning bolt attack, but it's easily blocked by the mighty Typhon. Typhon, on the counterattack, slams Zeus down. The god of thunder, in his recovery, is said to get a glimpse or a vision of Kronos' scythe, so it kind of manifests around him, and this is a special weapon capable of slaying gods who are immortal, just by nature. So Zeus grabs the scythe and goes for the killing blow, but Typhon easily dodges it, and he strikes Zeus down again so hard he drops the blade.
Seriously overpowered.
Typhon, now wielding the legendary scythe, proceeded to remove Zeus's tendons.
Oh, shit.
This left Zeus defenseless and finally defeated. Typhon celebrates his victory as a new supreme ruler. I imagine with a bunch of blow in the Oval Office equivalent of Olympus.
You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers.
And with his mission accomplished, he changed from his beast form into a nobler humanoid one. Typhon had Zeus's tendons locked in a box, to which he tasked his serpentine wife, Echidna, to guard.
He loved Echidna.
Yeah, his waifu, most trusted soldier. And though Typhon had won, there were many in the world who favored Zeus. Pan and Hermes began to connive a plan to rescue Zeus. So they waited for Typhon to walk away from the box, leaving Echidna alone. The plan went down like this. Pan, whose shout causes panic in all, confused Echidna with his voice. Hermes, with his godspeed, swiftly stole the box and gave them back to Zeus, who was able to move and easily broke the chains that held him down, and was filled with the rage of revenge. Typhon was informed of Zeus's jailbreak. Unsure of what lied beyond a second encounter with the god of thunder, Typhon sought out the Moirai, or the Fates. These beings were weavers of destiny. They can see the past, present, and future, and they informed Typhon that a second battle with Zeus was inevitable, and it would turn out bad for Typhon if he did nothing. They offered him a magical fruit that was said to give him the strength to defeat Zeus. Now, the Moirai were not allied with Typhon whatsoever. They represent the exact opposite of everything Typhon stood for. Chaos versus order, or what's fated and inevitable, unchangeable things. So eventually, Typhon and Zeus met. They were both in their humanoid forms, but Typhon felt something a bit different. He and Zeus were at parity, same power level. This was not the case the first time he had fought him. The fruit he consumed was actually a poison of sorts and drained his power. This caused Typhon's morale to drop. At the same time, Zeus's morale was boosted, understanding this was a favor from the Moirai. Seeing this now as an uneven fight, Typhon assumed his colossal form once again. Zeus gained the upper hand easily, and with all his strength, cast a devastating thunderbolt at Typhon's head. This hurt the immortal god and put him into a torporous state. Zeus, now the victor, placed a mountain over the crater where Typhon lay. The mountain is known as Etna and is a volcano on the island of Sicily. When it erupts, it is said to be Typhon's rage awakening. Etna is also said to be the place where Hephaestus and the Cyclopses made the thunderbolts for Zeus.
I like how they just gave him an apple and didn't specify who to give it to. Like, is it for him? Is it for Zeus? Just like, I'm gonna eat it.
He wanted to get it out of his inventory. It's taking up space.
All of this still sounds like Pokemon to me. Zeus used Thunderbolt.
It's super effective.
Well, here's the thing about that Thunderbolt. When you take a look at the DNA of the mythological story of Leviathan, Typhon, and Lotan. You find it absolutely everywhere. The Nazis knew about the ubiquity of these myths throughout cultures which share roots through a Proto-Indo-European language group, and they attempted to interpret them using dubious ideas about racial lineage. The Nazis' adoption of the swastika was a reference to the weaponry of the various storm gods used to vanquish the Serpent of Chaos, which the Nazis, like others before them, tried to associate with the enemies of the state, and following this metaphoric logic, justified them imposing their authority on those groups. By understanding these myths and their symbolic DNA, we can come to grips with why they speak to us so deeply and fortify our minds against their misuse by those who would wish to dominate us with them. After all, nearly every culture has a Lotan, Leviathan, or Typhon equivalent somewhere in mythology. Typically, or as we might say archetypally, the serpent or dragon personifies the undifferentiated forces of chaos, which is typically seen as dark, watery, undefined, and most importantly, primal. In the Hebrew Bible, Genesis describes the primordial state of chaos, and the earth was tohu bohu, formless and void, and darkness covered the face of Tehom, the deep. It is out of Tehom that God creates. Furthermore, Tehom is cognate to Tiamat, one of the oldest myths ever spoken and likely the strongest inspiration for the Greek Typhon.
Do you want me to just like name off the other examples of Chaoskampf in other cultures?
Sure.
So some examples of the broad range that this concept of a storm god or a war god fighting a chaos serpent dragon thing. I'm just going to go over some of the versus matchups we have on the fight card here. So we got Tiamat versus Marduk, Apep versus Ra, Typhon versus Zeus, Jormungandr versus Thor, which is Norse mythology, Vitra versus Indra, which is Vedic, Indian culture. Like I said, Yamata no Orochi versus Susano in Japan. We got Dobrynya Nikitic, which is Slavic, versus Zeme. And in Aztec mythology, we have Tezcatlipoca versus Zipaquetli. That's all over the world. You know, that's across all the oceans, north and southern hemispheres. This concept of a chaos dragon and a god fighting, and then creation comes out of it.
And that's one of the controversies about the opening of Genesis, is that if you really read it, it suggests that the deep, the Tehom, the formless and void, tohu bohu, it was there, and then God showed up and imposed order upon it. Where, like, as time goes on, we like to imagine, well, God just created everything. Like, no, he showed up and imposed order on something that was already there, which is this primordial sea dragon. As we'll see, it's oftentimes represented in exactly that way. Let's take a look all the way back to, like, one of the oldest examples we can. Tiamat is an ancient Mesopotamian creation deity which, according to the Enuma Elish, existed prior to all other deities and gave birth to them through her union with her husband Apsu. While Tiamat, the glistening one, was associated with salty water of the ocean, her counterpart Apsu was the fresh groundwater, a pairing echoed in the later rabbinical tales of Leviathan and Behemoth. Something goes amiss between the two, and Apsu decides to kill all the lesser gods because they're making too much noise, or alternatively, Apsu learns his kids are planning to usurp him. Either way, it results in the lesser gods piling onto Apsu and killing him. This enrages Tiamat, who generates multitudes of ferocious demons, monsters, and dragons to attack Ea Enki and his friends who aided in killing Apsu. Tiamat then elected one of her sons, the demon god Kingu, to lead her forces in battle and become her new consort, granting him the fabled Tablets of Destiny to wear as his breastplate. That's what Darth Vader has on his breastplate. Both Tiamat and Kingu would meet their end at the hands of the mighty hero Marduk, who used the body of Tiamat to create the earth and sky, and then later the blood of the demon god Kingu to create humans to carry out the menial labor of harvesting grain to be baked into food for the gods. Because humans were created with Kingu's blood, we have a host of dark qualities built directly into our nature. So that makes Tiamat our mom, kinda.
So is Tiamat like the serpent?
It's astoundingly like Typhon because she's the one that generates all the monsters in the pantheon after that.
Monster mommy.
And it's kind of messed up what happens because she doesn't want her kids to kill her husband, but they can't really work it out, so they end up killing Apsu anyway. And then they're taunting her like, oh, you just stood by while we killed dad. What kind of mom are you? In the occult tradition, we see this symbolized by the serpent and the egg, which we call the cosmogonic egg. In Hinduism, they call it the Brahmanda. And it symbolizes this idea of movement in the waters of creation. which by their arising or the cracking of the egg create the two hemispheres, the earth and the sky.
I was thinking about this for the episode too. Like, why is there a serpent around? It's typically called the world egg, and then there's a serpent coiled around it. And apparently it has some Egyptian origins, but the reason why it's used in, Masonic literature or symbolism is because it's a representation of the active part of the creative diode of active and passive. The egg would be the passive part of it, but the snake is the active part of it.
Sometimes the snake is shown inside the egg as well. So it can either be on the outside of the egg or inside of the egg.
Yeah, some people ponder on the mystery. Is that egg from the mouth of the snake? Is it giving birth to it?
Or is it a fractal recurring thing?
Is it going to crack it? What is going to happen? Either way, it kind of like makes a cycle somehow. It's just the relationship of the active and the passive parts of it.
The Egyptian cosmic egg is one of the things that people often mistake for a light bulb. When they're like, oh, they had light bulbs in Egypt. Look at this crazy relief.
Yeah, it's in the Temple of Hathor.
Yeah, it does look a little bit like a light bulb, but it's a snake inside of an egg. Yeah.
That's probably how they came up with the light bulb.
I mean, I want to mention how much this sounds like Scientology, but I don't want to talk about that.
I don't want to get my kneecaps broken. And if you'd like to hear the rest of the episode where we talk about Tiamat's connection with the tarot, the ancient Egyptian origin of this archetype, picking up a really long cat, Ragnarok, and Cthulhu, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will get you access to not just the second half of this episode, it'll be the second half of all the rest of the episodes as well. I'll even send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art at no additional cost, and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can ask us questions about what sea snakes are probably supposed to taste like anytime, day or night. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.